What's going on, everybody? It is another late night rambly edition here with your boy Midnight Q, because, well, it's time for one of those videos, am I right? Now, we all know that I'm a gamer. I play everything. Yes, that even includes Nintendo. I play Nintendo, I play Sony, I play Microsoft to an extent, and I play PC. Hell, I even used to play Sega. But primarily, my preferred platform of choice is PC. And you may be wondering why. Well, I've already covered it a million times, but let me give you the TLDR. Basically, I choose to play on PC because I have a certain level of standards. I have a certain level of quality I deem in pretty much every aspect of my life. And this extends to gaming, which means I want better quality, better visuals, better performance, better experience overall. And that's not even including stuff like the openness and freedom and choice that is afforded to us here in the glorious PC Gaming Master Race. But having said all that, I mean, my very first thing I ever played was a Commodore 64. You could kind of count that as a PC, I guess, but it's always kind of seemed like a consoleized PC to an extent. But over the years, I mean, I've played Super Nintendo, and this is only going through stuff that I owned at the time when it was current and relevant. PlayStation, N64, Dreamcast, GameCube, the PS2, you get the idea. OG Xbox, I'm not going to go through the entire list. But it's all there. And throughout all of that, for the most part, PC has been there as well. So I'm going to take you down a little trip down memory lane. Not this one you're looking at right now. This is just some aesthetically pleasing something to look at in the meantime as we ramble and muse and recall and recollect and whatever it is we're going to do here. But I'm going to explain to you something I don't think I've ever explained before, at least not on the channel here. I'm going to tell you and give you the deets of exactly when I believe I became a proper PC gamer. Something that got me into it, essentially. Because like I said, depending on what way you look at it, I started on Commodore 64. Slightly after that, I remember playing my uncle's Amiga a lot. Whenever he wasn't on it, he would let me play it sometimes. I remember playing the Settlers. I remember playing some other stuff like the Chaos Engine. A couple of other games on there too. Gods was another side-scroller that I remember playing on there. Just one of the few that... Blood Money, another one. Again, the list goes on. It would just keep coming back and back and more and more and more. But I wouldn't count that. Something when I was probably, 5, 6 years old. I wouldn't count that as the moment I became a PC gamer. No. It wouldn't even be fast forwarding to the mid-90s. Because, well, I guess I'm kind of old at this point, aren't I? But I wouldn't even count in the mid-90s when that same uncle got a Windows 95 PC. And he was showing me some of the great stuff on there. I remember over time playing Wing Commander and Elite, and there's a bunch of other stuff on there too. And as much fun and as amazing and all that was at the time, that wasn't the time I became a PC gamer either. Now, fast forward a few more years after that, and my family got a Windows 98 PC. We got our own little home one. So that was kind of for everyone. Now, there wasn't much I knew about back then, of course. Let's just assume we got it in 98. I would have been about 12 years old. So, not too much for me to go on from there. But I do remember getting more and more interested in it back then when we had that computer. Now, again, it was a very, very basic computer. It had, I think it was 16 MB of RAM, then some of that was shared for the video, so it couldn't really do too much. But it was times like that, and on that computer, that I remember finally starting to explore more games. I would get along the lines of... now, this is just a very, very brief sampling of the whole thing, of course. I remember the Total Annihilation games. I remember the point-and-click Blade Runner game. I remember, of course, probably one of the more important ones at the time, The Sims. That's right. Your boy here was a massive Sims addict. I still have all my original Sims games, or rather my original Sim game, and all the expansion packs for it. Yeah, big deal, I know. There's so many other things as well. I mean, Return to Castle Wolfenstein. We've got Medal of Honor Allied Assault, my personal favorite World War II first-person shooter game. There's so many other ones that I could go into as well, and I'm just going to get lost. No One Lives Forever is another one that I have to mention there, and that's a very important one as well. Because, oh, and one of the Total War games, actually the first Total War, I got introduced to that at the same time. And between No One Lives Forever and Half-Life, of course, and Opposing Force and Blue Shift, with all of that, most of those games I got from my friends. One friend in particular, actually. He was the one, he had Total War, Total Annihilation, Half-Life, hell, even Fallout 1 and 2, actually, same guy. But it was in around that time, in that period. And I could play them all on our computer at home. And coupled with some of the stuff that I got from my uncle at the time as well, because he gave me a couple of things that he thought I'd like and want to play, that's when I was introduced to Diablo as well. Now, despite the story getting a bit more detailed and in-depth here, this still isn't the time I would classify myself as a PC gamer. Because, sure, there was a bit I could do on there. I was learning more and more. I was learning what PC gaming was to an extent, because there was really no proper internet back then. There was practically no, I guess, resources for me to look this stuff up and find it and whatnot. But let's fast forward a couple of years again. We'll fast forward. It's somewhere between 2 to 4 years. It would have been the early 2000s. I got my own private personal computer. Now, this one actually had its own graphics card. I had, I believe it was 256 MB of RAM. I had it was either 1.7 or 1.8 gigahertz Pentium 4. And I had a GeForce 2 MX, is it 400? MX 420? Whatever the MX4 something was for the GeForce 2 series. That was what I had. And this was a graphics card. And this was big deal at the time. Of course, if you're a PC gamer, you already know this. But that was a big deal at the time. And I could play all the stuff that I had played previously on the old computer. I could play it so much better. And not only that, but it could finally show the visuals properly. Back then, we didn't realize there was a difference in graphics until I got this computer with the graphics card, because we didn't understand any of the video settings and all that stuff. But then I remember installing No One Lives Forever, which is a series of fantastic games, by the way. They're so good, and I really, really hope that someday they are rescued from licensing hell and are re-released. I would absolutely love that. But that's when I finally saw the graphical improvements and everything at the time. Specifically, No One Lives Forever. That was the big one. Because if you don't know, there's a bunch of enemy characters in No One Lives Forever. They're kind of like the bad group, and they're basically dressed like go-go girls. Now, the modeling on the original version that I played on my original family computer and my friend's family computer, very, very basic. But then suddenly, we install it on our new computer. Everything is recognized automatically and set to the highest quality settings, and we start playing it. And they have an outfit. It's basically kind of like a halter top, and then they have a kind of a mini skirt, and their midriff is exposed. But if you play it with higher quality settings, it has some kind of plastic layer between them, and it has a kind of funky reflective effect. And we couldn't see that before. So many details that were absent before were now included. And that made us curious about how much better this was. Not only did it feel better to play and all, but it looked better, which was the most important thing. Well, I guess it was, at the time it was the most important thing, because we didn't really know much back then. But again, this also stretched over to Half-Life. Half-Life 1, Opposing Force, and Blue Shift. Now, I may be jumping ahead a little bit here, but that's still not the time I would classify myself as a PC gamer. Even though the majority of what I played at the time was primarily on PC, if it was available. Now, again, I said I'm jumping a little bit forward here. I can't remember when No One Lives Forever 2 came out, but it was in around the same era, because I remember playing it on that PC. And again, the difference, the quality, jumping forward, it was so good. No One Lives Forever 2, brilliant game. Now, I'm not going to harp on with stuff like how long Diablo 2 lasted me and whatnot as well. But we'll jump a little bit forward. We're almost there, guys, believe me. We're going to jump forward from the early 2000s to 2004. And that's when Half-Life 2 came out. Of course, Half-Life 2, a seminal game that we all know has, well, arguably changed the face of PC gaming in essence, in some way, shape and form. Now, naturally, as a huge fan of Half-Life and Opposing Force and Blue Shift, and some of the amazing mods that used to come on discs with, yes, PC gaming magazines at the time, they came with discs with mods and demos and shareware and all on it. Crazy times, am I right? But Half-Life 2. Now, this game brought my computer at the time to its knees. Everything was on the absolute lowest setting. And you're thinking, Q, I know you. What's going on here? This is, I can't believe what I'm hearing when you're saying you played something on the lowest settings. That's right, because I still didn't properly understand upgrades and proper PC hardware for the most part. But I knew, because of No One Lives Forever 1 and the difference of original computers that we played it on and then my one with the graphics card, I knew there was a difference available somehow. And when I was playing Half-Life 2, it got rough because my computer, I don't even remember off the top of my head if that computer was below the minimum spec or not. I didn't really, again, understand specific specs, like minimum specs, recommended specs, which part I had and which part was which, etc., which was better than what and which wasn't. But I remember that every time you hit a loading screen in that game, not specific, well, I guess you could call it a loading screen. It's not. Whenever you get to a certain part and it has to load up the next area, you get the little loading pop-up in the middle. Or when you die and you have to reload. That would take me minutes at a time. That's right. That would take me between 2, 3, and 4 minutes at a time. It was rough. It was very, very rough. You modern console guys could probably relate, because you have many games nowadays that take minutes to load. Yeah. So, I was there. I did it before you guys, remember that. That's why I've moved on past that. Now, because of all of that, I still managed to struggle, and I still managed to force myself to get through the game, because it was just so good. However, during what is arguably, I guess you could call it the final, I won't call it cutscene maybe, the final pre-ending cutscene. There's a huge segment near the end of Half-Life 2 where you basically kind of lose control of your character, and you're put into talking scenes and travel scenes and whatnot. There was actually one point where my computer could not handle it and it could not load up the area, so I couldn't finish Half-Life 2 because of my computer. And at that point, I realized, okay, I need to look into some of this. This was the mid-2000s by this point. Late 2004, early 2005. So by then, the internet was a little bit more prevalent. Technology, magazines, learning, materials were a bit more available to me at the time. And of course, I was a little bit older, so I understood it, great English cue. I understood it a little bit more. And that's kind of where it led me. And it's in a round. Basically, I credit Half-Life 2 for turning me into a true PC gamer. Most people are going to say, oh, that's so unoriginal, or that's a meme, but that's how much it actually influenced it at the time. And because of Half-Life 2 and what my computer could or couldn't do, that's when I decided to learn. That's when I built my own computer. That's when I built my first computer with just my own hands, knowledge that I pulled from the most obscure places and all as well, and a little bit of trial and error, to be honest, and some wishful thinking. And you know what? I ended up with an absolutely amazing top-of-the-line PC at the time. In 2006, I ended up, built myself, paid for myself with my little first job at the time, working in a greeting card store when I was like 17 or something like that. And I managed to get myself an AMD Athlon X2 4800 plus socket 939, which at the time was the top end CPU, was beating out what Intel could do at the time. That's right, guys. Before Radeon or before Ryzen, AMD actually could do competitive chips until Core Duo and Core 2 Duo, and then of course the i-series came along and made AMD completely irrelevant for, Jesus, how many years? A decade? But yeah, I had that. I had 4 gigabytes of DDR400 RAM, which was the max the board could take at the moment. I also had 4 750 gigabyte Seagate Barracuda drives, which were brand new and top of the line at the time. Imagine in 2005, no, it would have been either 2005 or 2006. Imagine having 3 terabytes of storage, and your pitiful little consoles couldn't even manage that in 2013. Hell, still arguably can't even with solid state storage in far into the future. But not only that, there is a key important point that I'm leaving out of this till right now. My GPU, or specifically my GPUs. That's right, LeadTech GeForce 7800 GTX in SLI. The GTX model had 512 megabytes of video RAM each. That's right, these were big dogs. These were €800 graphics cards at the time. These were the equivalent of your 3080. They're not a 3090, let's not go that far. But these are your 2080. These, well, I guess they would have been your 2080 Ti. These were your 3080. These were your 1080 Ti's. These were your big dog graphics cards at the time. SLI bridge and everything. Games I could play, specifically Half-Life 2, how it looked, how it played, how quick it loaded. Oh my god, it was glorious. So that is pretty much it. The rest is history. And here I am, to this day, 15 or so years later, give or take, and I am proudly and loudly a PC gamer in the PC Gaming Master Race, a card-carrying member of the glorious PC Gaming Master Race. And it's all thanks not just to whatever it was I played on that Amiga that my uncle had. It wasn't down to just Wing Commander and Elite on Windows 95. It wasn't down to Diablo on Windows 98 or The Sims. Remember I said I had my own computer? Not the family one, but my own first one, not the one I built. That had Windows ME on it. Imagine that. Windows ME. I could run that motherfucker stable. I was one of the few people that could run that. I would run that for days stable. I had it locked down and precise. And everyone else, of course, was running for 4 hours and it was crashing on them. Good times. Good times. But yeah, that's it. It's Half-Life 2. And naturally, of course, that computer, the 7800 GTX SLI computer, that did me for several more years until it eventually died through. This was back before we knew the true damage of power surges, and that was when that was killed on me. But that computer, that did me so well with everything else. Unreal Tournament 2K4, Prey, Fear, the list goes on. There's so much in there as well. But key and most importantly, Half-Life 2. That's the one that did it for me. And, well, the rest is history. The love letter is in this video, I guess. The love letter is everything I talk about. The love letter is everything I play and what I preach and believe to this day. And it's all because, primarily at least anyway, Half-Life 2. Fun fact about that computer, that 7800 GTX SLI, a friend of mine has built that same computer. Granted, he does use the socket, I think it's AM Plus or AM2 or whatever it is. He uses the slightly upgraded version. Well, it's the same CPU, it's just in a different socket. He has built pretty much an identical PC to that using those two graphics cards, 4 gigabytes of RAM and that same CPU. And you know what's really funny about it? If you benchmark those GPUs in SLI, it comes out with a higher score than a regular Tegra X1. That's right, it has a higher benchmark score than a Nintendo Switch. That is especially funny to me. Anyway, that's it for the entire thing we have here for our little, whatever you want to call this, my story about how I became a glorious PC Master Race gamer. Of course, since then I have built another computer, which, I've built 2 computers. Remember I said that computer died on me because of a power surge? That was a couple of years after it. I went for about a year, maybe 2 years without a proper PC, proper gaming PC. I had a laptop at the time, which, believe it or not, had a it was an NVIDIA GT 7600 Go, which, well, back then, laptop versions of graphics cards were a lot to be desired. Far cry from nowadays, I guess. But, yeah, I went for a couple of years without a proper gaming PC. Then I built myself that i7 2600K. I built myself the GTX 690 in there as well. That lasted me from, when did it come out? 2011, 2012, it was in around there. That lasted me all the way up to 2016 when I built the computer I'm using right now. i7 5960X and a GTX 1080. And of course, nothing but solid state storage and a shitload of RAM and a massive case with a crap load of cooling and 3 monitors and lots of other extra stuff that has got me into doing all this and streaming all this and doing what I do and all, I guess. And of course, in about 2 weeks, I will be replacing my GTX 1080 with an RTX 3090. I'll be adding another little laptop beside this as well within the next coming days, and that will be my streaming box / I guess college computer at the same time. And then, hopefully sometime within the next maybe 2-3 months, preferably before Cyberpunk 2077 launches, I'll build another computer. And that one is going to be an absolute beast. To continue on the tradition of high-end, top-end PC gaming. The reason why I PC game, to get the best, highest quality experience in every single way that I can only get on the PC. Pay the cost to be the boss. You get what you pay for, basically. And I don't mind paying for it because I'm going to spend so much time reaping the benefits from it that it's going to be absolutely worth it. Anyway, we're going to wrap this one up here. It's not going to have the usual little outro because, well, it doesn't feel appropriate. So, peace out everyone, and thanks for listening.